It was about 9 years ago. My heart was beating fast. My mind was confused. Thoughts are running through my head telling me this can't be real. I've never felt such fear before in my life. Before I was born, my parents built a cabin in the northern White Mountains of Arizona. As a kid, we would go up there every chance we got. Summer break was spent up there, Memorial Day, etc. My parents had friends up there with kids my age, and we'd always run around the woods, hanging out and just being kids. We used to tell scary stories of an old abandoned property down the way from all our cabins, but we would never go there. You could not miss this property if you tried. Going down the dirt road to our cabin, there was this giant field on the left. Right in the middle of it was a property that was clearly abandoned and had been for decades. It had quite a few structures on it, namely a large green 2-story barn, a red airplane hangar, and a white tractor barn. It also had a house nestled up on a hill with the only tree on the entire property. The house looked eerie with its broken windows and peeling paint. The tree was always filled with crows, something straight out of a horror movie. As kids, we would never dare to go there. We would maybe venture towards the front of the property line if we were really daring. As teenagers wanting an adrenaline fix though, we would finally venture over there. By my sophomore year of high school, we began to go to the property routinely. We even went there at night a few times and explored the many different buildings on the property, always curious on what we would find inside. We found a bunch of odd things there, but one day I opened the drawer and gasped at what I found. There was this old workshop building that had an old workbench in it. I curiously opened one of the drawers and found something I recognized. A Jar Jar Binks notebook that I had when I was a kid. It was mine, as it had my childhood chicken scratch all over it, along with drawings I made. My name was written in it, and so were the names of my siblings, as we used it to keep track of score on a game. Dumbfounded that it was in this workshop, I thumbed through it and found some handwriting that I didn't recognize on the last few pages. None of my friends, nor my siblings knew how it got there or whose handwriting was in the back of it. In hindsight, we should have taken this as a sign to stop coming there, but we didn't. We continued going to the abandoned property to explore it and get away from our parents. By this point, we had made the top portion of the workshop into a hangout spot. We would hear floorboards creak and other scary noises, but we never let it get in the way of us going there. We all thought we could take on anything that came our way. Thinking back to how I acted when I was that age, I was never scared of anything. I was always the first one to go investigate when something sounded amiss. Hell, I was the first one to suggest we go over there. Other than the weird appearance of the notebook, nothing really stopped me or any of us from going there until the summer of my junior year, which was 2012. In the summer of 2012, I was 16, about to turn 17 that July. I had recently grown a new fondness for dirt biking and the freedom it would give me. I had just started riding earlier that year over spring break with my best friend named Logan. He started me out on a little Honda 125cc dirt bike, and we would ride all over the dirt roads and up in the woods. He rode a 1994 Suzuki DR200, an old Japanese enduro bike that was fully outfitted with a headlight and a speedometer. I worked my butt off to get to the point where he would comfortably let me ride it, and eventually I did. I absolutely loved having more power, a light for when it got dark, and the ability to tell how fast I was going and push it a little more every day. On this day, we had spent the majority of the day riding the bikes down our normal trails. We had finally gotten a break from all the rain as the monsoon had come in, and it would rain just about every day, all day. Logan and I were giddy that we had this day to romp the bikes around and not get covered in mud or get soaking wet. We had been riding since the morning, and we both decided that we would end the day over at the abandoned barn. Logan had been there plenty of times with me, and we both hadn't been over there in a week or so. It was close to sunset, and we had stopped at my parents' cabin to get some water and eat dinner quickly. I hopped on the DR200, he got on the 125, and we both started making our way to the property. Being on the bigger, faster bike, I beat Logan to the property by a few minutes. I pulled in the long driveway and turned around right in front of the hangar so that I could watch Logan pull in, and we could decide what we would do from here. I let the bike idle in neutral and just sat waiting for him to come. To get some idea of where I was waiting, I was right behind the hangar. To my left was the green workshop, and in front of me, about 20 feet, was this old white tractor barn. It was in bad shape. The doors had fallen off years prior and had crumbled to dust by the time we started going over there. On both sides of the barn were huge 15-foot doors for big equipment to get into, and on the left of the door was a small regular-sized door for someone to go in. Since all the doors had fallen off the barn, you could see right through the large doors right to the other side. There were also 3 windows on each wall of the barn. However, you could not see on the left side of the regular-sized door, since the door was about 2 feet in from the wall. This is all very important to help visualize what I saw that night. As I'm sitting there in front of this white tractor barn, I'm looking out towards the driveway which was to the left of the barn, waiting for Logan to pull up. I never felt uneasy or panicked. I just sat there, patiently. At this point in time, I was pretty comfortable being on the property by myself. I'm looking out towards the driveway when I see something large move in the tractor barn out of the corner of my eye. I turn my head quickly to look at the barn, and I see nothing there. At first, I don't think much of it and turn back towards the driveway waiting for Logan. As I'm sitting there, I started to overthink that I even saw something move to begin with, that I'm just freaking myself out, even though I'm reassuring myself that it was probably my eyes playing tricks on me. My eyes started to drift away from the road and towards the barn. I became transfixed on it as I saw a pale, skinny white hand place itself on the left side of the regular door. I see this, and I genuinely don't know what to make of it, but I can't move. I'm sitting on the bike, just completely still, watching. Then I see another hand get placed on the door below it. And before I even have time to process the other hand on the door frame, I see a head poke around the corner, looking at me. I became paralyzed with fear. My ears started to ring, and my head couldn't make any sense of what was looking at me. It was an extremely pale man with eyes darker than anything I'd ever seen in my life. It was hiding most of its body behind the wall and was just peering around the corner, looking straight at me. I started to panic, but I couldn't look away. I couldn't even move. I remember thoughts running through my mind, telling myself this can't be real, and I'm just seeing things. But then, I noticed something that would confirm this was real. In its eyes, or the reflection of the headlight on my dirt bike. Then I knew. There is no way. This is my imagination. My heart started to beat faster and I started to sweat. There was no way I was going to take my eyes off whatever this thing was. I mean, the only way I can describe it is it looked like Gollum from Lord of the Rings. That's the only comparison I can make to this thing that I saw. And as if it couldn't get any worse, I saw it open its mouth and smile at me, revealing some short, sharper teeth. Up until this point, I was too scared to think that my life was in danger. I guess I hadn't felt threatened by it, more just unnerved and scared looking at it, because I genuinely had no idea what this thing was. Once I saw its teeth looking at me, I knew I had to get the hell out of there. I knew whatever this thing, entity, animal, person was, it wanted to do me harm. Right as I made the decision to put the bike in gear and hit the road, I heard Logan's dirt bike and saw him pull in the driveway. I threw the bike into first gear and gunned it off the line, yelling at him to turn around and leave, before he could ask why I was already past him and at the end of the driveway. I looked back and saw him quickly turn the bike around and start hauling ass towards me. We got back to my cabin and I was completely panicked, sweating, panting, just terrified. Logan pulled in right behind me and I could see he was wide-eyed and spooked too. When he was turning around on the side of the barn, he saw something looking at him through the side window. Before I could start to describe what I saw, he beat me to it, saying he saw black, beady eyes looking out at him. We both saw the same thing, and it only confirmed that whatever was out there was real. Neither of us ever went back to that property again. And a few years ago, it was bought, and a lot of the structures were torn down, including the old tractor barn where this thing was. I'm 25 years old now, and I still go up to the cabin all the time. In fact, I was there just last weekend. Typing this story has made me relive this event all over again. I've told this story before, to my siblings and some of my friends. It never fails to make me tear up, thinking about the true terror I felt that day. Whatever I saw was real, and it haunts me to think about it. There have been weird things that have happened at our cabin. Those stories are for another day. And every time I'm alone out on the porch, looking in the darkness of the pasture, I can't help but think of this thing I saw 9 years ago. This will probably haunt me until the day I die. This is a relatively old story that my dad has told me a few times over the years. But with Halloween coming up, it's been on my mind again. I myself have never been able to witness the house, though the description I've been given by multiple men, 20-something years after seeing it, gave me a very vivid mental image. To begin, I would like to mention that my father is a highly religious man, a preacher's son, and does not believe in ghosts or anything paranormal in the slightest. Nothing seems to spook him either, but he still swears up and down that he felt something unnatural that scared the shaw out of him, even just from mentioning the story to me on the rare occasion that he would bring it up. Back in the late 80s, he and a few friends would regularly hike over the Waterfall Creek bed behind our farm and would follow the trails up until they eventually met the frontage road off of the interstate. Well, one night, they decide to take a different route to go around the backside of another farmer's land, mostly to see the animals because they owned emus and other large pets that weren't common in the local area. Supposedly, after leaving the area and continuing into the woods, at night of all wonderful times, they managed to stumble upon what is described by all 5 men 20 years later as a Blair Witch look-alike house. It was a very, very old home, and my dad claims that just looking at it gave him this ominous feeling. But of course, they had to go inside and check it out. Inside the house was a vintage cottage-style home that was probably built in the late 40s or early 50s, and the group was instantly met with writing and symbols in strange Latin-like languages, with a few English graffiti pieces that quoted a supposed satanic or pagan worshipping ritual, with certain pieces describing how to sacrifice a human soul to some supposedly demonic deity. My father still claims to this day that certain symbols were painted on the walls in blood, while others were clearly spray paint. And I find it easier to believe because he also worked as a firefighter for years before this happened and had a lot of experience with having to see human blood and dismembered bodies on the freeway after car accidents. Past a small living kitchen area was a stairwell that was so small that their shoulders would physically brush either side of the wall as they went up, and the stairs went straight, stopped at a small landing, then turned right, so as you started up, you could not see what might be standing at the top. At the top of the stairs, a door led to a large attic-style bedroom where actual chain manacles and locks hung from one of the walls near a circular window at the end of the room, which was also completely covered in weird symbols, graffiti, and now, more obvious and frightening, large dried puddles of blood that had seeped into the floors and walls. Allegedly, once they were upstairs investigating the room, they swear that they heard someone moving up the stairwell behind them quickly. But when they looked back, there was no one there. Everyone, essentially, told me that it sounded almost like heels clacking on wood, and now completely spooked, they rushed back down the stairs to see if someone was playing a prank on them and was hiding downstairs. Surprise, surprise, they found nothing and no new footprints in the dust and grime that differed from the ones they left on their way in. To keep things interesting, I met with each of the guys separately to ask them about what they remembered, expecting to maybe find a crack or something to prove that maybe they were exaggerating. But when I asked them, I got the same answer from each of them with no hesitation. They got the same details right down to the minute that they entered the house and the minute they left. But here's where it gets really strange. They left the house and for some unknown reason decided to try walking back from a different route, using a compass to approach from the east instead of the south. They did this test more than 10 times that night, walking from every possible route or direction, yet they always came out at the front entrance of the house, even when the compass and common knowledge of the area showed that it was physically impossible to be at the south end of the house when they moved in a straight line from the north, east, or west. There probably is some scientific explanation for it, but I haven't found one yet. These guys knew those woods literally like the back of their hand, and still do to this day. The final time that the guys came back and found themselves standing at the front door of the house, they begin to feel physically ill, verging on feverish, and finally decide that it's time to give up when one of them nearly faints, and as they turn to leave, the man who nearly fainted turns, looks up and points at the circular window at the front of the house on the second story. Everyone looks and immediately sees a tall female figure, hunched over, standing in the window watching them, though they see no features on her face other than two large, dark-colored eyes. and it sort of shuffled in place, slight before turning and walking away, as if it were heading to the stairs at the end of the room. At the sight of the figure actually moving, they all took off running through the woods, ending up on the side of the interstate about 3 miles from my dad's house, where they originally started from. They eventually made it back to my dad's place, though they claim that they felt as if someone were following them the entire way, and my dad's cousin gets up to get some water from the kitchen only to announce that he swore that he saw the same figure standing outside of the kitchen window near the edge of the woods, close to the woodshed. Thankfully, nothing ever came from the experience other than a collective state of absolute terror when the subject is brought up. They wrote off what his cousin saw as paranoia or pareidolia, though 5 years later, they decided to return to see if the house was still standing. Miraculously, it had fallen in on itself and was nothing more than a pile of rubble, and they never went back. I always joked with my dad and would ask him what he would do if he went back and found the house standing the same way it had back then, trying to give him a reason to let me go and see the place for myself. But with trespassing laws being far more prevalent in today's times, it would be nearly impossible without either getting shot or going to jail, as it was not on our property. I don't know. It always gives me the creeps thinking about it, but I never considered the story to be true until I did this little mock interview with all of the guys. And when I say that these grown men are scared to death by this story, I mean it. Seeing them get physically worked up and frightened by just telling the story really caused me to be less of a skeptic. What do you guys think? Could it possible that they were just spooked and it caused them to see things? A few months ago, I embarked on a solo hiking trip deep into the heart of the wilderness. I was an avid adventurer, seeking solace in nature's embrace. As the sun began its descent, casting long shadows over the towering trees, I realized I had underestimated the journey ahead. Nightfall was imminent, and I had no choice but to find shelter. Luck seemed to be on my side when I stumbled upon a cabin hidden among the dense forest. It was an old, weathered structure that seemed to have been forgotten by time itself. Its windows were cracked, and the front door creaked ominously as I pushed it open. Inside, the air was musty and filled with the scent of decay. A layer of dust covered everything, hinting at years of abandonment. Despite the eerie atmosphere, I convinced myself that spending the night there would be better than braving the dangers of the wilderness in the dark. As the hours passed, strange noises echoed through the cabin's corridors. Whispers seemed to emanate from the walls, and the floorboards groaned as if burdened by unseen forces. I dismissed it as my imagination running wild, trying to rationalize the situation. But then, a painting on the wall caught my attention. It depicted a family, a man, a woman, and a little girl, all with wide smiles and eyes that seemed to follow me wherever I went. Their presence sent shivers down my spine. Something was off about them, something unsettling. Attempting to shake off my unease, I ventured further into the cabin, exploring the rooms one by one. In the back, I discovered a small study. On the desk, a journal lay open, its pages filled with faded ink. As I leafed through its entries, my heart sank. The author, a man who had sought refuge in the cabin, just like me, chronicled his descent into madness. He described the whispers that plagued his mind, the hallucinations that tormented him day and night. The journal ended abruptly, leaving me with more questions than answers. Determined to uncover the truth, I decided to spend one more night in the cabin. Sleep eluded me as the whispers grew louder, the voices intertwining with my thoughts. I couldn't discern reality from delusion, and the boundary between them blurred. By morning, I was a mere shell of my former self. The faces in the painting had twisted into grotesque contortions, leering at me with malice. Shadows danced menacingly, mocking my feeble attempts to escape. The cabin had become a prison, and I was trapped within its walls. With the last ounce of my strength, I fled from that unholy place, not daring to look back. As I emerged from the forest, I glanced over my shoulder, expecting to see the dilapidated cabin, but it was gone, vanished without a trace, as if it had never existed. I have since tried to uncover the history of that cursed place, but my efforts have been in vain. It seems the cabin was but a mere whisper in the annals of time, a forgotten nightmare etched into the fabric of the forest. So, dear Redditors, take heed of my cautionary tale. If you ever stumble upon an abandoned cabin in the woods, think twice before seeking refuge within its walls. For in those forsaken places, dark forces lie.